Why you avoid people more as you age, and why it's not just normal, but necessary. You're not broken. You're not bitter. You're just beginning to understand peace. There comes a moment in life, quiet and unannounced, when your instincts shift. You hear the phone ring and let it go. You see a message and don't feel the urgency to respond. The doorbell rings, and instead of rushing to answer, you pause. It's not fear. It's not rudeness. It's clarity. A gentle inner voice now speaks louder than obligation. You've started choosing silence over noise, presence over performance, and solitude over social pressure. At Midnight Voices, we create space for these unspoken truths, for the slow unraveling of who you thought you had to be, and the soft arrival of who you really are. This isn't withdrawal, this is wisdom. And today, we're going to talk about why stepping back from others might just be the most loving thing you ever do for yourself. 1. You've lost the appetite for nonsense. There was a time you stayed in conversations long after your spirit had left. You smiled when you didn't feel like smiling. You nodded along to nonsense just to keep the peace. You sat at tables with people who drained you, out of obligation, habit, or guilt. But something has shifted. Now, the moment someone starts speaking just to hear their own voice, you feel it. A quiet resistance rising inside you. Not anger, not judgment, just a clear and honest no. Thank you echoing in your chest. You no longer fake laughter for jokes that fall flat. You no longer reward arrogance with your attention. You've learned that just because someone's talking, doesn't mean you have to listen. And more than that, you've stopped feeling the need to explain why. That's not you becoming bitter. That's you becoming honest. Because after years of emotional endurance, after carrying conversations, holding back opinions, absorbing noise, you've finally granted yourself permission to walk away. Not with drama, not with resentment, but with quiet dignity. You're not chasing approval anymore. You're protecting your peace. And in a world obsessed with constant connection, that simple act of not engaging is the boldest form of wisdom there is. 2. You don't want more people. You want better energy. There was a time when being busy made you feel important. The full calendar, the buzzing phone, the constant invitations. It felt like life was happening all around you, and you had to keep up. But now, you've learned that presence is not the same as purpose. And being surrounded doesn't always mean being supported. So you've started asking better questions. Who fills me up, and who quietly empties me? Who listens to understand, and who just waits to talk? And the answers have changed everything. You no longer chase loud rooms to avoid your own silence. You no longer force conversations just to prove you're still in the loop. You've discovered that peace doesn't come from being around people. It comes from being around the right people. And when they're not around, you don't feel lonely. You feel aligned. Because solitude isn't empty. It's full of the things that matter most: clarity, calm, and the deep relief of not needing to perform. You've realized that your time is energy. And your energy is sacred. So now, instead of saying yes to everyone, you say yes to yourself. You choose people who make your world feel softer, not louder. And if those people are few, or even rare, that's okay. Because one genuine presence is worth more than 100 polite faces. 3. You carry invisible grief. There are losses that make headlines in your life: funerals, goodbyes, final hugs. But there are also quieter ones. A friend who stopped calling. A sibling who changed too much. A neighbor who moved away. Taking years of shared routines with them. No big event, no drama, just distance, and silence that lingers like a ghost. As you grow older, these small disappearances start to add up. Not in pain, but in perspective. You begin to understand that grief doesn't always wear black. Sometimes, it looks like an empty chair, or a name you no longer scroll past in your contacts. And for many, there's no desire to refill what's gone. Not out of bitterness, but out of reverence. Because some spaces aren't meant to be replaced. They're meant to be respected. You stop collecting people the way you once did. You no longer measure your worth by how full the room is. You start finding meaning in the quiet presence of what was, and the calm recognition of what is. You sit with the memories, not to relive them, but to thank them. And in doing so, you realize there's a kind of grief that doesn't ache. It simply teaches you to treasure who's still here, and to honor the silence of those who are not. Some call that sadness, but in truth, it's maturity. It's what happens when the heart grows wise enough to know that letting go isn't the same as forgetting. It's simply the soul making space for peace. 4. Social fatigue isn't laziness, it's accumulated labor. You used to power through social events like it was second nature. Smile here, nod there, balance 5 conversations at once. Now, just thinking about it makes your body tense. And it's not because you're lazy. It's because you've spent decades navigating the emotional terrain of others. Mediating arguments, filling silences, being the one who keeps it all together. That's not rest, that's work. You've learned that every gathering carries an invisible cost. Mental energy, emotional endurance, physical presence. A simple lunch can wipe you out for the rest of the afternoon. A birthday party in a loud restaurant feels like running a marathon with no finish line. So you begin choosing rest over obligation, peace over presence, not because you're tired of people, but because you're tired of being on. And now, your peace is no longer negotiable. You protect it like something sacred, because it is. Because you finally understand, you don't have to show up everywhere to still be whole. 5. You know yourself now, and that changes everything. There's a clarity that only comes with time. Not just about the world, but about yourself. You know what lifts you. You know what drains you. You know what crosses the line, and what's simply not worth your energy anymore. And because of that, you stop apologizing for how you protect your peace. You decline invitations without guilt. You say no without needing to explain. You walk away from old patterns that no longer fit the person you become. Some people might see that as selfish. But it's not. It's self-honoring. You're not filtering yourself to be more likable. You're not shrinking to fit into rooms that once made you feel seen. You've earned the right to choose who gets your time. And just as importantly, who doesn't. And that doesn't make you hard. It makes you whole. Because when you finally know yourself, you stop negotiating your worth just to make others comfortable. 6. Time has changed its value. When you were younger, an hour felt disposable. You gave it away without a second thought, to people, places, distractions that never gave anything back. But now, an hour feels like something you can hold in your hand. Something to be guarded, measured, treasured. You've lived long enough to know that not all time is equal. Some moments stretch you, others restore you. And the older you get, the more you care about the difference. You start asking harder questions before saying yes. Will this leave me drained? Will I walk away feeling lighter or heavier? Because now, you're not just spending time. You're investing it. And you've learned, quietly, without needing to announce it, that your energy is not a gift to be given freely anymore. It's a currency you spend carefully, with people and experiences that honor your pace. And if that means fewer events, fewer calls, fewer commitments, so be it, because you finally understand, what you say no to defines your peace, just as much as what you say yes to. 7. Society says you're pulling away, but you're actually coming home. People will notice your silence before they understand it. They'll say, "You've changed. You're not as social anymore. You used to be the life of the party." And they'll mean it with concern, maybe even disappointment. But here's what they won't see. You're not fading, you're returning. Not disappearing, but reappearing, to yourself. You're no longer chasing crowds to feel valid. You're no longer saying yes to prove you're still fun. You're no longer performing the version of you that kept others comfortable. You're creating space to breathe, to think, to be, without editing who you are for an audience. That's not withdrawal. That's realignment. You're not rejecting people. You're reclaiming yourself. And the truth is, you don't need to explain that shift. Not to friends, not to family, not to anyone. Because the deeper you settle into who you really are, the more you realize, peace doesn't ask for permission. It simply arrives when you stop apologizing for needing it. 8. You're not avoiding the world. You're finally choosing your world. There's a difference between hiding and choosing. Hiding is rooted in fear. Choosing is rooted in clarity. You're not pulling away because you're afraid of people. You're pulling inward because you're tired of what no longer nourishes you. You've realized that not every conversation needs your voice. Not every relationship deserves your effort. Not every gathering is worth the recovery. And so you filter, not to shut the world out, but to let the right things in. You've learned to spot energy that feels safe. People who don't need you to perform. Spaces where your silence is welcome, not questioned. You no longer chase connection. You create conditions for it to come naturally. Slowly, quietly, authentically. And when it does arrive, it stays. Not because you entertained it, but because you made room for what truly fits. So no, you're not avoiding the world. You're building one that feels more like home. One where you belong without explanation. 9. This new you may feel lonely at first, but then comes the clarity. At first, the silence feels sharp. The phone doesn't ring as much. The invitations slow down. And when they do come, you hesitate to say yes. It's not sadness exactly. It's something quieter. A pause. A space. One you're not quite sure what to do with yet. But in that space, something begins to settle. Your nervous system stops bracing. Your thoughts slow down. And your heart, finally, has room to speak. You realize that what you once called loneliness was actually just unfamiliar stillness. And when you stop trying to fill every gap with noise or people or plans, you start hearing the most important voice of all. Your own. You remember who you are, outside of being useful, entertaining, or liked. And that clarity? It doesn't come with applause. It comes with peace. The kind of peace that whispers, you don't have to be everything to everyone anymore. And when that truth finally lands, you stop longing for more company and start cherishing your own. 10. The science agrees. This shift might save your life. What if choosing solitude isn't just emotional wisdom, but biological protection? Research shows that chronic stress, especially from toxic environments and emotional overload, can speed up aging, weaken the immune system, and increase the risk of heart disease. And so when you say no to chaotic conversations, when you step away from people who pull you into conflict, you're not avoiding life. You're extending it. Your nervous system finds relief. Your mind gets quieter. Even your body starts to soften into the stillness. It's no wonder that many elders seem calmer, more centered, more at peace. They've stopped fighting to be understood. They've stopped carrying other people's emotions like unpaid labor. They've stopped sprinting toward connection and started walking toward themselves. This isn't retreat, it's healing. Because every time you protect your peace, you're not just reclaiming your time, you're giving your body the rest it spent decades waiting for. And that rest? It's not laziness. It's medicine. You're not becoming less social. You're becoming more you. Maybe your weekend plans have faded into quiet mornings. Maybe the phone doesn't ring as much. Maybe you spent the afternoon doing absolutely nothing. And for the first time, it felt like everything. That's not loneliness. That's alignment. That's what it feels like when your life stops being about pleasing others and starts becoming a space where you can finally breathe. You're not becoming less. You're becoming clearer. You're not drifting away. You're coming home to yourself. You're not cold or distant or bitter. You're wise enough to know that real connection doesn't come from being constantly surrounded. It comes from being genuinely seen. And those who truly see you, they won't need an explanation. They'll understand the silence. They'll honor the pause. They'll love you in your quiet form. Because the most beautiful version of you is the one that no longer performs, but simply exists, peacefully, unapologetically, and fully present with yourself. And if this message felt like it understood you better than most people have lately, then don't let it be the last time we talk. Subscribe to Midnight Voices. We release calm, meaningful videos just like this, every day. No pressure, no noise, just space to breathe, reflect, and remember, you're not alone. You're just finally listening to the part of you that's been whispering all along.